Okay, a little bit more science for G-Man. Today it's cells. And cells are the basic unit of life. That means everything that is alive is made up of cells. Now, this is part of the evidence that supports evolution. We know everything that's living is made up of cells, and when we look closer at all cells, we find they have certain things in common, as if they all share a common ancestor. Okay, they all have a cell membrane. They all have DNA, and they all have ribosomes. These are the basic things necessary to form a cell, which is essentially like a balloon, if you like, made up of the cell membrane that controls what enters and leaves the cell. The DNA codes for protein and controls the cell. And ribosomes, they make protein out of amino acids. There we go. So let's have a quick look. Now, if we were to look very closely at the cell membrane, what you'd find is that it's made up of phospholipids. Now let's have a think about this. So this is the phospho. We have this bit, and we have this bit. There's two parts. Now, if we look at a phospholipid, we see that it actually has two parts. It has a phosphoric head, which is hydrophilic. That means it likes water. That's this bit. We then find that it has a lipid tail, this bit, which is hydrophobic, means it dislikes water. Yeah, if you think about it, a lipid, these are fats and oils. If you think about it, they don't mix with water. So if you've got a whole load of these little phospholipids floating around in water, they actually naturally form bubbles. Now, if, like I say, we're going to turn this into our cell membrane, so we've got a cell. This is our cell. And this here is our cell membrane. And if we look at it, we zoomed in on just that bit. Wow. Bam, bam, bam. What we'd see is lots of these phospholipids all lined up like this. Go on and on and on. This is what forms our cell membrane. Like this. They just float like this. This end, this is water. Whoops, more water. So at this end, this is the hydrophilic end, being attracted to the water. This is the hydrophobic end, being repelled away from the water, so they align themselves like this. And incidentally, by the way, the thing about this kind of membrane is, even though it has these lipid tails, the water itself can actually pass through, because the molecules are so small that they will, to a certain extent, get in here, be repelled and come back out the other side. Anyway, this is our cell membrane. This is the first part, isn't it? And if we looked at a bacteria, it looked like that, what we'd see is that it have this cell membrane, and inside it, it would have its DNA. This is our bacteria. And it's got a cell membrane. It's got DNA. We'll have some plasmids, which is a small loop of DNA. And it has these things called ribosomes. Remember, all cells have ribosomes. But it's got no nucleus. It's got no organelles. Because it's got no nucleus, we say this is pro. That's supposed to be an eukaryotic, which means before nucleus. Bacteria, first living creatures, the most simple thing. Now, if we then went on and we drew a basic animal cell, we find that it still has a cell membrane made up of these phospholipids, but inside it, about the same size as a bacteria, we see that it has a nucleus, and the nucleus has a double membrane, almost as if, and this is the idea, originally a controlling bacteria went inside another bacteria and took it over. And the only function that this original bacteria had was to take over that cell. So this is our nucleus, which contains the DNA, does all the controlling. This is an animal cell, so it's also going to have about the same size as a bacteria again. A mitochondria. Let's have a look up here. So what extra things do we get to when we start looking at eukaryotic cells? Well, they all have a nucleus which contains DNA. They all have mitochondria. Which is the powerhouse of the cell. It actually just produces ATP. It takes food, your glucose from your food, and it breaks it down into smaller pieces that contain the energy currency of the cell called ATP. So what else is there? Well, if you think about it, you eat lots of different foods with fats and proteins, and it gets broken down into amino acids. Now, if our cells are going to use all of that to produce more cells to make all of the things necessary for the cell to function properly, it actually has to have its own little sort of production plant. And there's two things there right next to your nucleus. Quite often you have something called rough endoplasmic reticulum. Endoplasmic Reticulum, or ER. So this here is the rough ER, and these bits here are actually ribosomes. It's the ribosomes that give it its name, the rough ER. And the thing is, this takes your chemicals from inside your cell and it produces the things that you need. We also have a second production plant. So these are like the production plant of the cell. And these, they always seem to look like this. They might look a bit different depending on what you're looking at. They're actually a 3D structure and I'm drawing it in 2D. And this is the smooth ER. It's a lot more about producing lipids, which are the fats that we might need. These two things produce things like fats and hormones, which are fats and lipids combined quite often. Fats and lipids, that's not right. Fats and proteins, and all of these things go whizzing off around the body. They leave the cell. They also produce things like in the cell membrane itself. We also have proteins. In the cell membrane. I hope I didn't say cell wall then. So we're looking back here, and quite often what you'll get is like a tube, got a bit of a hole. Oh, I've not drawn that very well. And these things might turn up like that. If that's the outside of the cell, they might have some extra proteins and stuff. And these actually are what the cell uses to pass signals or receive signals or control things, its interaction with the other cells. So we've got our eukaryotic cells, and we've looked at the basic things here. We've got a cell membrane, we've got the nucleus, we've got mitochondria, we've got endoplasmic reticulum. Oh yeah, we have slightly bigger ribosomes floating around. So obviously we need to make proteins just for ourselves as well. And then this is a basic animal cell, remember, but then we also have other types of cell, and the differences are, right, so we got plants. Plants have a nucleus. They also have a very strong, you notice I'm drawing it round. Don't get to think that plant cells are square. They're not. They tend to tessellate a little bit better than just round cells like that. You know, they fit together. So we have cell membrane. We have a cellulose cell wall. We have our mitochondria. And we also have the thing that makes our plants green. Is chloroplasts. Remember, all of these organelles a bit like your own organs, like your heart and your lungs and everything. They're called organelles of the cell. Organelle, like little mini organs. they're all about the same size as bacteria. The eukaryotic cell with its nucleus is bigger than a bacteria, but all of its organelles are about the same size as bacteria. And the idea being that originally there was a larger bacteria that got took over it by another bacteria and recruited other bacteria that have specialized functions, so that eventually it started out competing other things, other living things, other bacteria. And this is what formed the first eukaryotic cells, which went on to become multicellular creatures such as ourselves today. One other thing, plants. Obviously, I've not mentioned the protists, which are all the single-celled planty animals. Some are more like plants, some are more like animals. This is why they've ended up being in their own category, their own type of cell. Some have a cell wall, some don't. So I'm not going to draw that on. But we do have fungi, which is like plants. So fungi have a chitin cell wall, have a cell wall made of chitin, but no chloroplasts, because like animals, they eat other stuff. Okay, so in one lesson of 15 minutes or so, whatever this is, that is most of the things you need to know about cells. The idea that all living things are made from cells, that they all have a cell membrane and DNA which codes for proteins and controls the cell, that over time we became more specialized. We had eukaryotic cells, and they went on, and I just remembered something else. All bacteria have a cell wall, which is made of something different to cellulose and chitin, because it is a bacterial cell wall. And there's different kinds, and we'll worry about that some other time, should I ever come around to talking about bacteria and their structure. So anyway, yes, this is our cell theory, which is something that you must always remember. This is just a theory. Cell theory, the theory that everything is made of cells, everything living is made of cells. But if you think that's questionable, try and think of something which would be alive that's not made of cells. The only thing you might come up with is a virus. And there's a big question: are they living? Anyway, enjoy. Hope this made sense to you. Hope it's informed you again, G-Man. Remember, this is the basic thing that we're looking at. This is not complicated. This is just the basic idea. There we go. Just make sure you can get everything in. Prokaryotic, eukaryotic, different kinds of cells. Enjoy.